You know, Alex, I walked into the shop this morning and the smell of cedar hit me so hard, I almost forgot I had a mortgage. There's something about a fresh Monday, it's like a blank piece of Baltic birch. You haven't messed it up with a bad cut yet, and the possibilities are still perfect.
Speak for yourself. My Monday started with a possibility of coffee that ended up all over my rug, but I'm glad one of us is feeling poetic. Since you're in such a high-spirited mood, are you ready to tackle the daily digest? We've got everything from giant lasers to concrete surgery today.
I was born ready, or at least, I was born with a wrench in my hand and a confused look on my face, which is close enough. Let's kick things off with some heavy-duty industrial wins. First, a huge shout out to Marion Manufacturing over in Connecticut. They just picked up the SBA Manufacturer of the Year award.
I saw that. It's always cool to see the precision crowd get their flowers. Usually those folks are tucked away in a shop so clean you could eat a steak off the floor, just quietly making the parts that keep the rest of the world from falling apart.
Precisely. And speaking of precision, did you see the new Trump True Laser? It's a 9 kilowatt beast. Now, for the folks at home, 9 kilowatts doesn't mean it makes a nice piece of toast. It means it eats through thick-walled pipe, like a hot knife through lukewarm butter.
I'm trying to imagine you with a 9 kW laser. You'd probably try to use it to cut your morning bagel and end up vaporizing your toaster, the counter, and possibly the neighbor's cat.
Look, I have a healthy respect for power. I remember the first time I used a high-pressure plasma cutter, I felt like I was holding a captured star. The beauty of these new machines is that they're getting faster without getting sloppy. Back in the day, if you wanted to go through heavy steel, you had to move at a snail's pace. And by the time you were done, the heat distortion made the metal look like a potato chip. This thing is a game changer for the fabrication shops.
And it looks like the finishing side is getting some love too. Wagner released the Sprint 2 Expert. They're claiming it makes powder coating a lot more intuitive.
Which is polite marketing speak for it's harder to screw it up. Powder coating is one of those things that looks easy on YouTube, but then you try it and end up with orange peel texture or thin spots that look like a moth-eaten sweater. Anything that gives a manual operator more control over that cloud of pigment is a win in my book.
Moving from the machines to the humans, we've got some big news for anyone looking to ditch the cubicle life. Burns-O-Matic is putting a massive chunk of change into scholarships.
This makes my heart beat a little faster. 50 scholarships through 2029 for plumbing and HVAC apprentices.
It's about time, right? We've been talking about the silver tsunami of retirements for years. These aren't just jobs. They're essentially recession-proof golden tickets.
You're not wrong. When your water heater decides to turn your basement into a swimming pool at 3 o'clock a.m. on a Tuesday, you don't call a philosopher. You call a plumber. If you're an apprentice listening to this, please go for these brand-sponsored grants. Most kids are fighting for the same academic scholarships at big universities, while these trade-specific funds sometimes sit there with fewer applicants. It's like finding a $20 bill in an old pair of work pants, except the $20 bill is actually a debt-free education.
You really love that old pants metaphor, don't you? But you're right. It's about the strategy, which actually leads us perfectly into our Maker Mogul segment. We're talking about moving from hobbyist to manager. The 2026 Shopify guidelines are out, and they're really pushing this idea of validate before you create.
This is where I have to play the role of the cautionary tale. Years ago, I decided I was going to sell these intricate hand-turned wooden bowls. I spent 3 months making 20 of them, polished them until I could see my own tired face in them, and then realized nobody wanted to pay $300 for a bowl. I was left with a very expensive set of cereal dishes for myself.
I remember those. You were eating Cheerios out of a $400 piece of burl for months.
Every spoonful tasted like regret. The lesson there, and what the minimum viable product or MVP strategy is all about, is simpler. Make one. Take a photo, see if the world bites before you go into debt buying a pallet of lumber.
And the marketing side has changed too. The micro-influence thing is huge right now. You don't need 1 million followers. You just need the 12 people in your town who are obsessed with, say, hand-forged garden trowels.
It's about being a big fish in a small pond. I'd rather have 50 followers who actually buy my work than 10,000 who just like a photo while they're sitting on the bus. Swap a shout out with a local welder or a florist. It costs you a cup of coffee and some conversation, and it builds a foundation that's actually solid.
All right, Tiger, let's get to the grit. Literally, concrete countertops. This is the DIY mastery project of the season. Why is everyone obsessed with pouring stone in their kitchens lately?
Because it's the only material that makes you feel like both a construction worker and a fine artist at the same time. Plus, it's indestructible. You can put a screaming hot cast iron skillet right on it, and the concrete just says, "Is that all you got?"
Okay, but I've seen some DIY concrete jobs that they look like a sidewalk inside a house. How do you make it look like a high-end countertop?
It's all in the vibration.
That sounded way more ominous than it needed to.
Look, when you pour that mix into your melamine mold, it's full of tiny little air pockets. If you just leave them there, your finished surface is going to look like a piece of Swiss cheese. You have to vibrate the air out. Now, you could buy a specialized vibrating table for $1,000, or you can do what I do. Take your orbital sander, take the sandpaper off, so it's just the hook and loop pad, and run it along the outside of the form.
Wait, just the vibration from the motor?
Exactly. You'll see the bubbles rise to the surface like they're escaping a sinking ship. It's the most satisfying 30 minutes of your life.
And what about the strength? I've heard horror stories about these things cracking in half the moment a house settles.
That's the tension problem. Concrete is like a grumpy old man. It's great under pressure, but it has zero flexibility. If you don't put rebar or ladder wire in there, it's going to snap. I once saw a guy try to save $5 by skipping the reinforcement on a 6-foot island. He went to flip the slab over after it cured, and it sounded like a gunshot. 2 weeks of work, gone in half a second.
I can feel the pain in your voice. I'm guessing that guy was you?
I will neither confirm nor deny, but let's just say I have a very sturdy, very short concrete bench in my garden that used to be a very long countertop.
Fair enough. So use reinforcement, vibrate the bubbles out, and use melamine for the mold because it's smooth as glass. Anything else?
Patience. Everyone wants to pull it out of the mold the next morning. Resist the urge, let it cure. It's like a good chili. It needs time for the chemistry to happen. If you rush it, you'll end up with soft edges that crumble when you try to polish them.
So, looking at the big picture for this week, whether someone is looking to go pro in the trades, start a side business, or just pour some concrete, what's the one thing they should keep in mind?
I think it's the idea that mistakes aren't just mistakes, they're the raw material of experience. Whether you're learning to run a 9 kilowatt laser or just trying to wrap your head around a business plan, your hands are going to get dirty, you're going to mess up a cut, you're going to have a product that nobody buys.
That's remarkably optimistic for a man who just admitted to snapping a countertop in half.
Well, that's the secret, Alex. The master in the shop isn't the guy who never makes a mistake. He's just the guy who's made more mistakes than the beginner and figured out how to fix them or how to turn them into a garden bench.
I like that. Turn your disasters into garden benches. That should be on a t-shirt.
Or a concrete plaque. Just make sure to vibrate the bubbles out of the letters.
Thanks for joining us for the TigerDen Daily. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about why your table saw is judging you.
It really is. I can see mine looking at me right now. Stay gritty, everyone.